It's looking pretty crazy in here today. Got a lot of stuff going on. Bunch of tools, all the parts. Cars over here. Got a few friends coming over today to help get this thing done. Got a bunch of stuff on the list to do. Hoping I can knock pretty much all of it out today. Shouldn't be that hard, a little time consuming. A couple things I didn't really account for is got some painting I need to do in here. I'm just gonna clean it up quick and then paint it. All of this harness sheathing is all just tattered and falling apart. So I'm probably just gonna rewrap all of the harness. I have some harness tape to do that. Over here, getting ready to powder coat a couple of the items, just the intake manifold, the valve cover, timing cover, and the coolant crossover pipes, and nothing crazy. But that's about where we're looking right now, so we'll all right, so I'm using some brake lean, and this is called CRC gasket remover. So that is taking off all the old paint off the valve cover, as well as it's taken off some of the paint off this crossover pipe. Getting it all prepped. Lunchtime update. Got the baffle in, hands clean, ready to be installed. Got the head on, timed with the cam gear. Manifold is on. Just starting to get the air piece studs in. Got the new starter in. Just got to wire up get the harness all cleaned up. Front harness is getting cleaned up now. We got a couple guys out there cleaning right now, getting all that ready. First powder coated item looks to be in pretty good shape. Little casting marks there, but overall in pretty good condition, so that turned out good. So we're just cruising right along here. So here's what we're doing for the injector harness. It's not the prettiest, but it works. Well, I should say hopefully it works. Not really too worried about it not working though. Pretty much inside of here, we left all the powers to the injectors that will still get fed off of the factory connector into the intake, but then all of these will be controlled with these wires, which will go to the EC. All right, so end of the day, aftermath. Definitely got messy and crazy in here. Didn't get quite as far as I would have hoped, but we got quite a bit done. There's also a lot to do, a lot more than I realized. So cylinder head is on. The valve cover, front timing cover, and intake manifold are powder coated. The turbo is just set on for now. A couple more things to do there. Ignition coils are getting located, getting figured out what I want to do with all that. Intercooler is starting to get mounted up. We were able to keep the condenser. Unfortunately, the fan was not able to fit, so I'll end up figuring out if we can get some slim electric fans to put on here that get triggered by the AC compressor. So got the new starter in there. So got quite a bit done today. Near complete for the intercooler fitting. Just have to get a mount made up quick and then start getting the plumbing for those routed, which shouldn't be too bad. Radiator, belts, hoses, just all the basic stuff. I know that's very time consuming. Then we gotta dig into the wiring, so that'll be a pretty big task. All right, so powder coating, using just this Eastwood gun, seems to work fine, kind of DIY projects. I'm touching up the manifold a little bit, not exactly. Turned out pretty good, but there's a couple spots that were just missed, so I'm just gonna do it while it's all apart. I'm also gonna do this little coolant pipe that goes kind of crossover, so get this in the oven. another good reason to check these ground wires. Look at this thing. Pretty nasty. For how cheap they are, might as well get them replaced. I have my new cable hanging in there already. All right, so got some plugs here. These were recommended to me also by Virgil for running a M20. Just so you guys can see that. I'm gonna gap these to about 20 thousandths. It's also what he recommended, kind of based on what he was doing in his application versus mine. Also, here's my throttle body. This is the E36 throttle position sensor with a billet. It's like a bracket mount. Fitment's okay. Looks like I'm gonna have to space it. Probably put just 2 washers under each. Should be okay for that. This is the old sensor. This is an E31. So for the wiring, you do want to switch 2 pins. I believe, I'd have to double check this, but I believe the ground pin for the E30 is, I believe it's pin 1. I wouldn't quote me on this, probably look up a wiring diagram, but pin 1 on the old sensor needs to be pin 2 on the new one, if I remember correctly. So we do have to swap those on the harness, just so the ECU can read that correctly. I guess technically I could just swap the pins around at the ECU, but that'd be a little bit more complicated maybe. For the ignition coils, kind of got them, I think, where we're gonna keep them. They're not mounted down yet, so they can move wherever. But what I purchased was a, these are ICT billet coil relocation kits for LS swaps. But obviously it's not getting a full swap, but I'm putting these coils in it. So these work pretty well. They look clean. They weren't crazy expensive. So it's a good option to keep it looking good. So I'll either do it like this or maybe angle them a little bit more so I can run the wires along the firewall and over to all the spark plugs. For the actual wiring itself, pretty much I was hoping I could just run the coils off of the factory coil power wire. Unfortunately, and that would be this guy, this green one, if you got a M20. So this guy is not going to get enough voltage though, or I'm sorry, enough amperage. I'm going to melt this wire over time. Probably won't melt right away, but it's not going to be great. It's going to get dry and brittle from all the heat. So I'm going to wire in a relay. Much thicker gauge wire, but I'm going to wire in this relay and pretty much run this is going to be the control for the relay. So that'll shut the relay, and then off the relay will come power that'll come through for my coils. So that's how those are going to get powered. It's about the simplest way I could do it while keeping a lot of the factory wiring, just to keep it simple, I guess. All right, so got the plate off. Needs to be cleaned a little bit more, but just so you guys can see it, it's the plate there. So I pulled the pipe out and I cut it just because I could see that it was pressed in there from the other side. So if you're gonna do this, I'd recommend pulling the pipe out. That way you can do some nice tapping. So that's gonna fit perfectly in there.